Hey guys, welcome back to this landscape painting demonstration. This is phase 3. And what I'm going to do is just paint a little more on this and try to share my thoughts about why I'm doing this or that. I'm going to do some work today on the texture in the grass, and also I'm going to work on warming up the ground and developing a third layer and a fourth layer of work, texture and temperature of the color both. I'm also going to work on deepening this a little bit with maybe some marks that will emulate the grass but push it farther back. I'm going to do some leaf texturizing here, and I want to look at truing up the trunk of my tree that's in the foreground. My brushes, mostly now, I'm coming away from the use of the 1 inch, and I'm using a 1/4 inch and an 1/8 inch, kind of a round. This is a 1/4 inch square in a way. And then this is, well, just a bamboo ink brush that I can use for larger areas if I need it. But mainly I imagine that I'll just be sticking with these two today. So, with that, I'm going to start with the 1/4 inch brush, and I'm going to do some work back here in these areas and then work my way up to this. Now here, my plan is to make some very dark singular brush strokes. I'm just going to be tapping with dark green, black, and blue here to give myself a darker foundation of leaves that are kind of in the center of the tree. Then later I'll come back and I'm still going to leave some of these brighter areas, and I really like that I have these bright areas in amber and gold and orange, and so that's going to really work for me if I put a couple darker ones on top. Really give me a sense of that light coming through the tree. So, without much more talk, here we go. I'm going to work my way into the black, and I'm just wetting the center of it and then wetting the side of that paint. And now I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm going to use the brush to wet the blue. Now with the smaller brush, I don't necessarily rub the whole affair. I'm just going to rub part of it, and I'm going to continue to rub the paint, because the more I rub with the water that's on the brush, the thicker the paint I will get. And so what I want to do now is put some of that off into my mixing palette over here. Clean my brush and get a little black. I'm going to mix that in with the blue. So I'm using a combination of black and blue in my mixing palette here. And that's very, very dark indeed, which is what I want. So I'm going to start with this tree, and I'm just going to lay in a couple of brush strokes. And I'm going with the shadows mainly, and I'm going to stick with that. And it's going to, I don't know, you can see it's kind of going to enter into an awkward looking stage where you're wondering what's going to happen next, or your painting is sometimes going to give you the feeling of, whoops, did I go too bold? Was I too dark? And the answer is no. The reason it looks awkward to you is because, well, it's not because you made a mistake, it's because the painting isn't finished. And what I'm telling myself here is that this is a layer. It's one of many layers. So I have to get more color from my palette. Now notice I'm not using straight green. I'm starting with the blue, because I can put green on top of this if I want. Again, this is, what some might call the underpainting. And these brush strokes are meant to imitate, you might have guessed, leaves. And I don't want an even disbursement. I want the heaviest of the marks and the bulk of my darkest to be on this side of the tree clump. So I am putting some out here for sure, but not nearly as many as on this side. Pick up some more color. think that'll work for now. Now that's all the work that I want to do. My darkest concentration is probably going to be right in there. And now I'm going to take this same color for the sake of unity, and I'm going to use a brush stroke more like the overall color here. I'm going to put some indications of that tree in and between the leaves to give it a sense of transparency, because you can see through some of the light on the trees that you're looking at. So it's really giving me a sense of depth now. This bright light is going to push this edge of the tree forward while pushing this part of the tree back. I'm going to go just a little bit darker with that, adding black to the blue that's already wet. There. Okay. And you might, well, maybe you feel like that's too much. Well, you can lift some of that off. Okay. Excuse me while I grab a paper towel. So if you're going to do any lifting, you want to wrap a paper towel around the head of your brush, squeeze and dry, and then you can lift that off if you feel like it's a little too much. And what I can come back and do in this area, because I feel like that was just a little bit too dark, is add a little green to that, which is what I'm going to do right now. And I can do that while it's wet. Mix the green with the blue and dab some of that back in there. Now there can be such a thing as overworking, so I do want to be very aware of what I'm doing. I'm going to edge that tree off and make it have a highlight center there. I'm going to steady my brush and go ahead and do the shadow side of my trunk on that side. Okay, now I'm going to focus on the trunk here for a little bit. And again, all this is just another layer in phase 3. There could be a phase 4, phase 5, and just keep on going. If you're not careful, you can overwork a painting. Typically what I find is, there's a sweet spot in the middle. You can underwork it, you can overwork it. I'm going to grab some of this green actually, and I'm going to mix it in with the black blue that I have there. And then the reason I'm adding the green is because I want to make a brown, kind of a warm brown, so I'm going to get a touch of red with the green, and that'll become a dark, warm, either gray or brown, which is what I'm after for the tree trunk on the shadow side. So basically, I'm going to come in and just touch. And I'm not going to put this shadow all the way to the end. Instead, I'm going to make it exist not in the middle, but I'm not going to bring the shadow all the way to the end of the tree. Because there is a lighter side on the other that I'm going to touch with highlight later on. I'm going to put the indication of a couple branches growing there. Another branch going off this way. A couple branches might be visible up inside the tree. Like that. And it really starts to take on a lot more life. I'm going to come in and work out some of the marks here in the shadow of the trunk as well with a brush stroke like so. I'm going to take some color out of my brush and then touch this shadow over here. I think I might have taken a little too much color out. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and rebuild the shadow for the tree off in the distance. I'm going to add a touch of blue to that because it needs to be farther back. So I've added a touch of blue to this shadow just for the sake of pushing it back into the space. There we go. And all I have to do is touch. Long shadow. Tree, sunlight coming from that direction. I'm going to extend that shadow through the body of this tree, just to add to some of that depth. So that's kind of the idea. Now with some of that same color mixed with blue, the gray that I made for the trunk now, I want to actually come in here and I've got that hillside there. I want to put a shadow in front of that as well. And really all I'm trying to do is add just a little bit of cool temperature to the grass that's back in the background to push it back into the background and keep it there. Now there's a pretty heavy distinction between this and this, so what do you do with that? You know, I've got a hard line here and then it just doesn't look quite right, so I'm going to take the large brush and go into the water, putting some water in it. I'm going to take some water out just to give myself a little more control. If I have an extra bristle in there, I'll pull that off. And I'm just going to soften that up some. I'm going to pull it down. Pull it down, and then once I've got the color downward, then I can move it side to side again. And again, if you get a bristle in there, I know it's tempting to try to get rid of it right now, but you might ruin some of what you've done with the painting. My advice would be just to let it dry there, and you can pick it off later. I'm going to go over here and even this up a little bit, add more blue to that area. You see that's looking a little bit better. Soften that and bring it down. Okay. My next move, I think, for this, and this is just something I'm going to get started with while you're watching, is just to add a little bit of that gold or orange color with yellow, combination of a little bit of yellow and red in the brush stroke of the grass. See, a touch of yellow here really is going to bring that forward, and even there for unity, just to bring the painting, parts of the painting together. What I'm doing is just adding warmth to create depth of space. This really brings your eye down here, and it changes pretty dramatically what's going to happen. So we'll stop there for now, and we'll come back for phase 4 later on.